video, I just wanted to let you know that the merch store is featuring a really nice holiday bundle. You can pick up a hoodie or a coffee cup with the Lift Feast game slogan and this really nice Christmas design, as well as a limited edition Santa themed sticker that is going to be for sale for the rest of December. So make sure to check that out. The link is in the description down below, and let's get into the video. Beyond Light has been out for 3 weeks. You and I have beaten the campaign. You have done it multiple times. You and I have started the season of the hunt. You have finished your title for it already.
Well, I have as many triumphs as are currently not time gated.
Right.
Like I'm literally just waiting for the last thing, and boop.
And you and I have done the raid. You have done it multiple times already, and have gotten the raid exotic multiple times. And you were there on day 1.
Yeah.
Okay, so just overall, what are your thoughts on Beyond Light? Because the last time we talked was our first impressions. We've had time to sink our teeth into it. As an expansion, what are your thoughts on it overall, and how much did you enjoy the narrative, like the story and all of its content? And you know, was it lacking at all? Do you think it was lacking in any department?
Okay. Well, keeping in mind that this is a spoiler cast, I am gonna go full into it. So for the campaign itself, it was, first of all, I liked it. Before I get into any actual like criticisms and critiques, I just want to put up front that I love Beyond Light. I think it's a great expansion. That said, it's curious to me how much of stuff for Europa has to be done off of Europa. Like when you are doing the aspect quests and the fragment quests, once you finally get stasis, once you beat the campaign, you do it, you finally freeze Aramis and dab on her. Once you're doing the aspect and fragment quests, it's curious to me how much of that is done off of Europa. It seems to me that you would want to have that on Europa to keep showcasing your destination.
Right.
Because if you're a solo player, it might have taken you a little bit longer, and you might be like different for a change of pace, right? But there are many people, and this is not to discredit the efforts of either newer players or people who are less experienced with the game, but there are many people who just like burn down the campaign.
Oh,
right?
Yeah.
Just absolutely wrecked it. Because they were trying to consume that content quickly, or they're trying to prepare for something, wink wink, or just like that's the kind of player they are. So didn't spend too much time on Europa already, and then it felt like, okay, now you're done with this place, go do some other stuff,
Yeah.
That felt a little weird. As far as the campaign itself, the missions, I actually really like the style of taking down Aramis's lieutenants, kind of like the Baron hunts. They felt more cohesive and challenging and interesting than the Baron hunts in Forsaken. I liked how many there were in Forsaken, but I liked the quality of the activity in Beyond Light more.
Right.
Because it felt like, each lieutenant had their own gimmick and had their own special boss fight, just like the Barons did. But it felt like the lieutenants were slightly more fleshed out, as opposed to just like, oh, here's this guy with a gimmick, and he's the villain of the week, and now he's dead. I've golden gunned him into the ground.
Yeah. I think out of the 3 of them, I think the priestess is the one that's the most fleshed out.
Yes.
Just because when you go through, you go through the campaign, you do the Varix Empire hunts and the Saboteur stuff, and it's only when you get to like, because I don't remember about the first 2, but when you get to the priestess, she's got a lot of dialogue, and like she has like a lot of narrative to her, because she believes that Aramis will return in like a blaze of glory, which I'm gonna be honest, there's no way Aramis just stays frozen on Europa
Nah.
for the rest of the time. It's physically impossible, my guy. Like, even if she's a seasonal threat, they have to bring, like, she's got to come back because she didn't die. Like, she's not dead. The darkness was just like, we're going to put you to sleep.
Yeah, honestly, like, we're putting you in a cocoon. My hope for that, for the future, and I'll go into depth on this concept either later in this episode or in a future episode. My honest hope is that Savathun is going to pull, like, a Masters of Evil or, like, an Injustice League and pull together all the prominent living or cocooned villains into the just, like, anti-Vanguard.
The Sinister Six.
Exactly. Just something like that. I think that would be awesome if that were done right, but I will move past that for just a second. So yeah, Critis was definitely the one that had the most development. She's also the lieutenant that people tended to struggle the most with.
Oh yeah, my god.
That said, Phylax, the first one you fight, the warrior, has the coldest line. She's like, "Oh, you're the destroyer of Oryx. Prove you're worth my time." Like, did I not just do that by you saying I'm the destroyer of Oryx? Like, what's good?
Thirst for your light. Chatter, chatter.
You killed like Space Satan, but prove you're worth my time, my guy.
Yeah, right?
That line always makes me laugh. So I thought the lieutenants were fun. I thought the missions were fun. Aramis is definitely coming back. I really like how they developed the narrative with the Stranger with Elsie Bray post-campaign too. When you're like going through the aspects and then make you go through the Lost Specters.
Right, because I haven't finished that one yet. So I have to go kill a patrol because I just did all my Gambit kills for the Cold Snap.
Yeah.
So,
well, I really like how they're developing that because those are some. I'm not going to necessarily reveal the content of them, but when you're going through those lost sectors, those are some very meaty cutscenes and have a lot of narrative to parse out there.
Yeah. Between those cutscenes, because I saw 2 with you.
Yeah.
Between those cutscenes and the lore book that you get from doing the aspects and the fragments and stuff.
Yeah.
The green one that kind of elaborates on Elsie's timeline where more or less, I'm pretty sure it's confirmed we were corrupted by the darkness. I also would not put it past Bungie to make that the same timeline where we die and Saint 14 gives our eulogy.
I would
just a theory, but like could be.
I would believe it if it's that timeline. I would also believe that the Atat using the Oxa machine saw into that timeline, and that's what the Chronicon is based on.
Ooh.
Where we're Callus's shadow.
Ooh, that too. That's huge, right? So they do a really good job at kind of elaborating that, and they set up this really nice narrative line of Anna Bray is obsessed with, at least in the dark timeline, we'll call it, Anna Bray is obsessed with, I don't necessarily want to say becoming stronger, but she's obsessed with being able to wield the darkness to use it to fight Savathun.
Yeah.
And as far as we know, she's one of the only few guardians, at least that we have met, that's left. And they kind of start planting the seeds with some dialogue that Elsie gives you, where she's like, I don't know if I should tell her about this now. Like, she needs to know about this now because I didn't tell her about it then, and it got her killed. So that's really cool. I think narratively, Beyond Light was a solid campaign.
Yes.
There are things I wish there was more of, like Eris and the Drifter, because the teaser trailer set up this whole thing. The initial reveal trailer set up this whole, like, the Stranger's like, this is what I brought you here to see. And that's supposedly, that all happens right before we meet the Stranger. Because that leads into the battle cutscene, I assume, which leads into her going, and here's our guardian right on time.
Yeah.
So I wish they had more fleshed out moments. Otherwise, Eris is still on the moon. The Drifter's still in the annex, and he'll have a throwaway line where he'll be like, "See you on Europa, brother." And it's like, no, you won't. Well, once you beat the campaign,
yeah, you won't.
Yeah, once you beat the campaign, he's gone. And because of Big Rona, the quest that he was supposed to give you and narrate you through was done by Ghost, which is hilarious in its own right. I think overall, before we get into like the raid and the season, I love this expansion.
Yes.
I think for Destiny 2, Beyond Light and Forsaken are kind of like neck and neck for my favorite expansion. I will always hold Rise of Iron at a bit of a higher pedestal just because Rise of Iron brought with it the Age of Triumph. And like they're synonymous with one another. And in my opinion, system-wise, Destiny was at its peak. Like that was the height of Destiny as a game, was Rise of Iron in terms of gear and ornaments and systems and all that kind of stuff. Beyond Light does a lot of things right. Like in the TWAB, if you're in orbit, the tower, or offline, you can now pick up bounties via the companion app, which is something we have wanted for years, which they were able to implement without making the tower and vendors absolutely pointless.
Yeah.
Before we get into the raid, I want to talk about, now you have Cloud Strike.
Oh yeah.
I haven't gotten that quest yet because I have not unlocked enough Saboteur columns. I've only been able to do like the first 2 or 3. But we both have Lament.
Yep.
And I will say, the Lament quest, like the final quest, arguably one of my favorite quests in Beyond Light. Like when you get the tank and you drive it, and then you proceed through. It's not Eternity. What is that? Creation. And you get to the big AI head, and that's like Shazam, and you find out, oh hey, guess what? Your gunsmith is Clovis Bray.
Yeah.
Which is like, what?
I will say that in terms of an expansion, it just came out, so like it's gonna need some time. But in terms of a single destination, Europa is probably the most lore dense single destination we've ever had in Destiny.
Yeah, I think rivaled only by the Dreaming City.
Yeah. And again, we've still got like a year. You know?
Yeah, we have a year, and I know that, yeah, it's just seasonal content from this point on, right? But that's a year.
Yeah.
Look what Season of Arrivals did. Season of Arrivals, I mean, we still don't even know what the Ascendant Lens is for.
Yeah.
I honestly, I don't think it's Hawkmoon, but I think it is tied to Season of the Hunt. Because the only 2 destinations you can go to for Wrathborns are the Tangled Shore and the Dreaming City.
I don't think these are going to be mutually exclusive. I still think we're going to use the Ascendant Lens to get Hawkmoon for Season of the Hunt.
Okay. Actually, that's fair. So let's talk about since we're talking about Season of the Hunt, let's get this out of the way. What are your thoughts on it compared to, the past year of seasons we've had?
Okay. So I like the concept of Season of the Hunt a lot. I'm looking forward to more content for it, because the whole concept of like, you find Crow, you have your Wrathborn lure, you put the lure down, you go on this hunt to face down this powerful Wrathborn. They like really hype up the Wrathborn, right? And then you set the lure and it runs off, either in the Tangled Shore or the Dreaming City, and it runs off. And you're like, all right, cool. And you've got to pick up the trail and you go find it and you start the special mission.
Right.
And then the boss ends up being like maybe slightly more challenging than a Lost Sector boss, and you're like, that was it. So I really love the concept. I love the concept of the core mechanic of Season of the Hunt, but right now it feels a little underwhelming. Because it's a great source of rewards.
Mhm.
And quick side note, there's no loot in Beyond Light group. That faction has been awful quiet lately.
Yeah.
Anyhow.
Because you want to know why? Because there's actually loot. You just have to play the
Yeah.
game.
Yeah. Been awful quiet lately.
And I'm gonna be honest. Listen, some of this loot is good. Like, and I'm talking Seasons of Arrival's good. Like the sidearm you get for doing the Stranger quest.
Yeah.
I forget the excavation zone or whatever, the Eclipse zone, the Eclipse quest, the High Elbdo or whatever it's called. That slaps in Gambit. I took that into Gambit, and I don't know if it's my role, but I love burst sidearms.
Mm-hmm.
I was literally melting ads and mobs with it and just going on a spree. That's really good. I know people hate on it, but the linear fusion rifle you get from doing Wrathborn hunts,
Actually snappy.
chef's kiss. My favorite linear since Crooked Fang. Hands down.
The grenade is pretty good. The scout feels surprisingly good.
I like the
But
scout.
there's also the raid loot. But speaking specifically on Season of the Hunt, it's developing slowly. Like, you can tell that it's building up. And also, if you go out and you defeat powerful enemies with your Leviathan's Breath, you have a chance of dropping the catalyst. And then that gives you an option to unlock Leviathan's Breath Catalyst Progress in your Wrathborn hunts. So like, if you already have all the drops, so that's useful, right? That's good.
Yeah, that's nutty.
But I wish that they would either add more difficulty to the hunts or add another layer to them, because right now building up a lure charge takes longer than the hunt itself.
Oh my god, yeah.
Which to me, that doesn't make a whole lot of sense, right? Given the difficulty of the hunt, if the hunt were more difficult and it took the amount of time that it currently does to build up a lure, I'd be like, okay, that makes sense, right?
Right.
But either the scaling for the percentage for obtaining a lure needs to be brought into step so that you gain them pretty quickly because it's an easy activity, or the difficulty of the hunt itself needs to be increased, in my opinion.
Yeah, I agree. Also, there are things that aren't really told to you. So
Yeah.
I sat there and used up all my lore charges trying to kill all the bosses because I wanted to finish the triumphs, and I didn't understand how to get the tier 2 for, I think it was like HDK1 and Zillithans, whatever her name is, the witch.
Zilox, yeah.
Zilox. I had to go online and look at a Polygon article that was like, oh yeah, to get a tier 2 Wrathborn hunt, you need to put all 3 canisters in your lore that have something in them.
Dude,
So,
I
like,
was bugging out about that on day one because I was like, off that triumph. Like, how do I do this?
I was with you. That was when you took me through my Wrathborns. I was so mad, and now I have to go and charge more lores. The other thing I was bummed about is the last lore I did was recon data, and I didn't have the tertiary canister to boost more recon data.
Yeah.
So I ended up with 17, which isn't bad. It's still enough to get a level, actually. Like, I'm at the point where I level up and have extra progress already put aside, kind of like the Umbral system. But like, I was like, okay, Crow, let me buy another one. I'm not selling it today. What do you mean? Like, I don't know if it's they just don't want people to stock up all at once, but I would have loved just to, like, even if they limited it to like, say 5 a day, be able to buy the tertiary canisters just like all of them from his inventory, and just be like, oh, okay, yeah, 10,000 glimmer, you can only buy 5 a day of each one. And it's like, oh, okay, so you could at least stock up so you have enough to do, say, 7, or not 7, I'm sorry, you have enough to do, like, you know, say 5 Wrathborn hunts, and get the things you need, because the boss ones rotate their reward. So you can't
Yeah.
cheese recon data, but as long as you have the extra canister, you can always boost up your rep. So that's something else. I do like the Wrathborn hunts a lot, but I do agree. It's like you got to sit there and play like 4 rounds of Gambit, or like do a bunch of strikes, and it's like, listen,
Yeah.
I don't want to chase pinnacles yet. I want to play the game. And this is something that I know other people have had a problem with in previous expansions and seasons that I never ran into, where it was like, oh, I just got to go do more strikes, or it's like I got to go play Crucible to do the thing. And I'm sitting here now at light level, 1235, still getting powerfuls that progress my power. And I'm like, yeah, I mean, I got to do Crucible and strikes for the Stranger. Then I've got to do Europa stuff for Varix. Then I've got to do Guardian kills for Duality and strikes and Crucible and Gambit wins. Then I've got to do, then there's the Pinnacles, and then there's this. And then if I want to level up these things, I've got to do this. And it's like, I don't want to play the playlist yet. I don't want to work towards that armor yet. I want to do all my Europa stuff. And then when I don't have any more Europa stuff to do, then I want to play all these things.
Well, I think the issue comes down to they were trying to have a focused on playlist activities, but there's a fine difference here between a focus on playlist activities and making you do playlist activities to progress other activities. Like that's not the same thing. Just because you are in the playlist, like, it's one thing if I'm forced to be in the playlist because I have to complete a bounty or I have to complete a quest step. It's another for me to queue up the playlist because there's a specific reward I want, right?
Yeah.
And there's a fine differentiation there, which I feel like kind of got lost in translation. And that's something I hope that they kind of improve on as the expansion develops and as more seasons are released. Because that felt a little silly to me, I'm not gonna lie.
No, yeah, I agree. I think that it would have been better if it was both, right? Like, you have to go and do strikes for, say, or like Gambit, right? You have to play Gambit for the Cold Snap Grenade. Like, that's what you have to do. That's the quest step. Play 3 matches of Gambit, kill enemies in Gambit with stasis or affected by stasis. Fine. Give me loot to get in Gambit, because you can't get, there's playlist armor, but you can't get playlist armor until you do their weekly, the weekly challenge, right? So I have 1 piece of Crucible playlist armor, and that's the only piece I will get out of my engrams until I do more of Shax's weekly challenges. And the notion behind that is, I get it, right? You don't want players to like what you're going to do next week when Iron Banner comes around. You don't want players like you or me who have 4,000 Crucible tokens to run up to Shax, dump them in, and just brute force our way into getting a full set, because then there's no reason to play Crucible. I understand that, but there's no other loot to get, right? There's no other specific loot in Crucible, in Gambit, in strikes, where you can be like, oh, I need to get strike, or I need to get Gambit matches done, but while I'm there, I have a chance of getting, I don't know, like, some, like, this dope new sidearm that's you can only get from Gambit drops, and if you win, it increases, like strike specific loot, like Crucible specific loot from D1. It's something they have not brought back yet that I don't understand. Like, Crucible, you get it for ranking up, and Gambit, you get it for ranking up. Like, I get that, but you don't know what that loot pool is. Like, in D1, you were like, no, you can get, if you do the Omnigul strike, you can get Grasp of Malik or the Warlock Bond. So you subconsciously, when you got into that strike, you could farm for that and whatever quest step for whatever gun you're on. But they haven't done it, and I don't think adept weapons and, and strikes and nightfalls is gonna solve that problem.
I think that depends on the quality of the loot, and we're gonna have to see that, I believe, starting next season. I think next season's gonna be huge. I think this first one, being Season of the Hunt again, this first season of the expansion, I feel like it's kind of actually the inverse of Shadowkeep, where Shadowkeep on initial release was honestly very weak, but it had the benefit of coming out with Undying.
Right.
So we felt like there was a lot of content. I feel like this is now the inverse, where Beyond Light came out, and it's very strong to start with. It's not fully developed yet, but it's very strong to start with. So now we can kind of see the flaws in Season of the Hunt. Because, I mean, honestly, like, it's fun, but there's not a lot to do. I do my 5 Wrathborn hunts for my Pinnacle, and I'm out. I don't touch it again, you know?
Yeah. Yeah, I'm the same way. I
feel like next season, it's going to be very strong, because that's when they're going to bring in a lot more of these weapons, like the concepts we're talking about, and I think that's when Vault of Glass is returning. So, like, I'm okay with this season being a little tepid, right? Because we're still uncovering secrets on Europa.
Right.
And we're going to be for the next 4 or 5 weeks at least for one of the triumphs, you know? Not even for, like, whatever campaign curveballs they throw at us, but for literally one of the triumphs, we have another 5 weeks of development and, like, uncovering lore. So I'm okay with this season being a little tepid, because I know, or rather I hope, that next season's going to be wild.
So I agree with the Shadowkeep analysis. I do think Season of the Hunt is a building season.
Yes.
What I hope they do is they narratively progress. Like, I hope, honestly, from now until the Witch Queen, I kind of want Crow to be the narrative focus for the seasons. Like, I want him to be there. I want him to be like a pivotal character that has a hand in everything we're doing, because right now we know that we're still getting a cutscene with the Cabal, Zavala, and Osiris. Osiris is in the tower, which leads me to believe at some point, because I don't know if she's there yet, but is Anna Bray in the tower? Is she chilling somewhere?
Nobody's found her, but, like,
narratively,
canon, yes,
narratively she's there. So, like, I assume she's gonna show up. There's dialogue in the bounties, like the bounty flavor text, where, like, Crow knows he's essentially being held prisoner. I actually saw a TikTok about it today where someone showed all the bounty dialogue. And there's one where it references him knowing that Glint is essentially a walking bomb.
Yep.
And it's so funny because Crow dislikes violence, and there's bounty text that was like, yeah, you know, before I shoot them, I close my eyes, almost like he doesn't want to see what's going on. So I think this is a building season. I'd love to see more Crow and see him kind of be a focus. I think the reason why people feel the way that, like, I kind of feel is because Season of Arrivals was kind of hefty. Even though it was dragged out, if Season of Arrivals was the length it should have been, it would have been the heftiest, meatiest season we have had since the Season of Opulence.
Yeah, I agree with that, actually.
Like by far. What my hope is for the next season, for season 14, 13, 14, right? What are we on?
I think 13 is going to be next, right?
Okay. Possibly, I don't remember. My hope...
Season next one.
Yeah, next season. The winter to spring season. My hope is that they bring back in some form playlist specific gear that you can earn on completion, that you don't have to, like, do the challenge to get the chance of it in your loot pool. Like, if I do a strike and that strike has a specific gun, throw that gun into the drop pool, let me have my RNG chance at the end, right? Yeah. I also honestly hope they bring back ornamentation for playlist armor.
Mm-hmm.
Because while people have gripes about it being one set, someone had mentioned that they did that in D1, which I don't remember. They could have done it for Crucible and Vanguard gear, but I miss ornamentation for playlist gear. I think
Yeah.
what that would do is, and I'm not a developer, but in my head, what that would do is that would allow Bungie to spice, add a little spice to playlist gear without having to completely overhaul and add new gear and add new roles. Like, you drop an ornament in, and each one has a different ornament, so you can kind of change up the gear so you can feel a little cooler. I think that would be huge, and I think that would go a long way with the player base.
I agree.
But I'm excited to see where the season goes. I want to see where the narrative goes. I can't wait for that cutscene with Osiris and Zavala.
Mm-hmm.
I hope by the end of the season we break Crow out of his prison. Now, we got about 20 minutes left.
Mm-hmm.
Let's talk about the meatiest part of this expansion. The Deep Stone Crypt.
Yep. Alright, so again, I'm gonna preface this. I love this raid. It is probably actually my favorite D2 raid.
Out of the ones I've done, yeah, I could throw it up. It's arguably it's tied with Last Wish because I didn't do Spire and I didn't do Eater. But it's way better than Garden. Like, my God. Because I'm gonna be honest, I thought Garden was fun, but if you were to sit down and be like, hey, we're gonna raid tonight, do you want to do Garden or Deep Stone Crypt or Last Wish? I would look at you and be like, so we're picking between Last Wish and Deep Stone Crypt. Because I don't, besides maybe getting armor, I don't want to go back to Garden at all.
Garden has really cool lore aspects and implications to it, and the loot is like pretty good, and the fact that you can get divinity from it is nice.
Yeah.
But otherwise, Garden is very tedious. But Deep Stone Crypt, the amount of lore in it, the narrative developments in it, the environmental storytelling, even just like the first part with Desolation, with moving the sparrows through, super fun. That first encounter where you've got to disable security, and then you see the Veil statue.
Oh my God! Go ahead.
The actual long, slow whisper. That's what that is. Because you go stand next to the statue, it whispers to you.
Okay, so real quick, what's the long, slow whisper? Is that what drove Clovis mad? Is that
yes?
Okay.
Yeah.
All right. That's okay. Also, what is it like? Does it like whisper like abstract things like the Queen will come? Oh, no, it's just like.
Yeah, it's just like the like insert psychological thriller / horror movie abstract whispering here.
I saw. Hold on. I saw you guys do that.
That was very cool.
When I saw that, I was like, what? So now this is what I've been saying, dude. Bungie, lean into that space fantasy horror.
Yeah.
That was dope. Continue.
So we had that, and then you go find Atrax, who's been an Exo the whole time. The alleged first fallen Exo, and then Old Man Tanix comes back.
Hold on. So Atrax is an Exo?
Atrax is an Exo, yes.
I'm gonna be real honest, he looked just like a splicer. Then that's in my head, I didn't question a single thing. I was just like, oh, it's a robot dude.
Yep.
Wow.
Nope. Atrax is an Exo.
Fallen Exo.
Yep. So that opens up a whole new world of possibilities.
Skolas is coming back, I'm calling it.
Dude. I wouldn't be surprised since Old Man Tanix came back. But then you go up to the orbital platform. which is really cool. And honestly, then you get my favorite part in Destiny 2, like in any raid ever, hands down, where you're
Mhm.
doing the spacewalk and it's all muted and Deep Stone Lullaby is playing.
So
That is that is probably the single best space in Destiny 2, in my opinion.
so I think like something I didn't get to do when you guys took me through
Mm-hmm.
was I didn't get to absorb the space station, right?
Mm-hmm.
Because by the time I came through, you guys were like, "All right, come on, let's go," and like I like
Yeah.
ran to the chest and ran through the hallway, and I was like, "Okay, we're
Yeah.
going." All
Mm-hmm.
right. Um, but the Deep Stone Lullaby, thinking back, it invokes the same feeling that the King's Fall raid, that you know the jumping puzzle I'm talking about,
Yeah.
where the mini dreadnoughts fly in and out of
Yep.
existence. It has that very same, like, if I sit there and picture it, it's got that very same atmosphere. My favorite part, I didn't realize it was muted, right? Like I didn't know what was
Yeah.
going on until the shanks came out and started firing.
Yep.
And then I pulled my trigger and you hear that muffled gunfire, which I've only heard that kind of sound effect. The last time I heard it was Mass Effect Andromeda, because there's a level where you're in a space station that's cracked in half
Mm-hmm.
and everything is like no oxygen, so you hear that muffling of. And the fact we did no comms was like
Yeah.
so
That
good.
that was important to me to do. We've done that every time since, and I think everyone is actually glad for it, for like the brief reprieve, and just like the change in comps.
Mm-hmm.
Because I mean, it really makes you appreciate it more, honestly. The babbling and cross comms would definitely like ruin that for me personally. And we'll probably get to a point where it's like, okay, you know, like we've done all this before, like here we go. But
Right.
for now, especially while the raid is still kind of fresh, definitely everyone is cool with the no comms thing.
We the next thing is so Tanix is back real quick.
Mm-hmm.
I assume the lore book is going to go into it more, because you know in the raid your ghost doesn't really, like, there's no, besides the little pieces of lore that you find, there's no real explanation. You have the Clovis AI talking to you, and he does this great monologue about the hand of God and
Yeah.
the hand of righteousness, just like really hams it up. And it's just, I love when villains give speeches like that.
Yeah.
Where it's just like, this is the hand of God, like I will force the hand of God, and you know. So narratively, the Fallen are trying to, not the Fallen. I thought the Fallen were going to try and bomb Europa. Clovis is trying to bomb Europa,
Yeah.
but isn't it Elsie that sets it off?
So in the original thing, what Elsie's trying to do is just destroy the crypt. Clovis is full on trying to destroy Europa.
Like he wants nothing to be found.
Yeah, he's trying to completely. Elsie was trying to air their dirty laundry and destroy the source of Clovis's power, kind of his crown jewel.
Right.
Clovis, once we've found out all these secrets, once we've found the crypt itself, once we've found the process and the long, slow whisper, that's when the Clovis AI is like, nope, all of it's got to go. Which leads into that third encounter where Tanix is trying to take over the orbital platform, the space station, because the Fallen are trying to use that technology. The Clovis AI is trying to crash the space station into the surface of Europa and completely destroy it with all the nukes on it. And we're trying to disarm the nukes as the space station is crashing.
It's honestly, that third encounter may be my favorite encounter of D2.
Yeah, it's wild.
More so than Riven, because in the heat of the moment, when you're like first timing it, like I was, you don't realize what's going on. And the next thing I know, like all I knew is I was shooting buttons and just standing in place. The next thing I know, I look out the window and we are just straight plummeting.
It's just fire
to Europa. And that was the moment where I was like, oh my god, like we're actually like falling to Europa. This is the first raid that physically like moves. Like
Yeah.
we progress. I mean, in D2, because in D1 you definitely progress in Wrath of the Machine. Like
Yeah.
you start from the Plague Lands and you progress further and further away from the Plague Lands until you get to the replication chamber
Mm-hmm.
at the end. But nothing on this scale. And
Mm-hmm.
honestly, I want to read the lore about Taniks.
Mm-hmm.
I honestly wish they opened like I know they technically opened a new area in Creation,
Mm-hmm.
but like I full blown wish they opened up the crypt for like a small, like they added just like a mission or like like a mini baby strike where like the crypt is open and like you can go into the crypt a little bit and just explore. Not necessarily the raid portion, but like a lost sector or something.
You know, just in the kind of spin foiling here, the crypt itself is still standing. I mean, parts of it are obviously destroyed because the space station like fell on it.
Right.
But
Right.
for all intents and purposes, like parts of the crypt are still intact. So if we ever see a dungeon come out and Beyond
Oh,
Light, we might get a dungeon into the crypt.
my goodness, that would be amazing. I think gear wise, Deep Stone Crypt has some of the coolest looking gear.
Yes.
Probably since Last Wish, because I just love the Great Hunt gear.
Mm-hmm.
But the color palette they chose for the DSC,
Yeah.
the white, the chrome, the neon, like it looks like the Firminous blue shader. Super nice. The shotgun looks really cool.
Yeah.
I got the black shader, and on the legs it changes the plating from black to white, which I think is really cool. I can't wait to get a full set. I definitely think Deep Stone Crypt is arguably one of the most fun raids.
Well, so the thing about getting the gear, and this is the thing that makes Deep Stone Crypt so great mechanically, is that once you do the final boss fight, which is like fun, once you get to the end of it, it feels on par with like a final boss fight. But during the execution of it, it's kind of like, okay, you know, like it's not as chaotic as Crown. It's not as like, it doesn't feel as massive in scale as
Right.
Garden. It doesn't feel like as imminently dangerous all the time as Riven. But then when you get into that like DPS phase and you get into the final stand of Taniks, that's when we're like, ah, yes, I see. But the thing mechanically that makes Deep Stone Crypt great is that at the end of it, you have the cache, where you can use Spoils of Conquest to then like pick up loot that you haven't gotten before, or re-roll specific pieces of loot, and that's where that replayability factor comes in.
So which cache gives you, like, does it tell you that you can get gear that you haven't gotten before? Because I just assume, I thought someone said during the raid that it was just to reacquire gear that you've gotten in the raid.
Nope, you new stuff. So you have 4 chests, one for each encounter.
Ooh.
And that chest will be highlighted if there's something from that encounter that you have not gotten before. And then the chest grays out if you've gotten all the stuff from that encounter. At which point, you can re-roll it from a selection below.
Okay. I have to keep that in mind. So sorry, I'm picking up different I'm picking up emblems that I have sitting in my account that I haven't redeemed yet. So one of the things I think the Deep Stone Crypt does really well is its length. The part we struggled on the most was Atrix and Taniks, which is, you know, arguably, if you look at the whole raid, like half the encounters, right? But it seems that the second encounter is it's not the gear check, right? Taniks is the gear check because by the time you get to Taniks, I went in at 12:30. By the time we got to Taniks was when I started feeling squishy. Atrax is the comms check because you
Yep.
really need to communicate for Atrax. Because I wasn't dying, we weren't wiping so much as because we were all getting killed. We were wiping because you miss one phase. That's kind of it. Which go ahead.
Atrax is very much the optimization encounter, and yes, for gear, but especially like for comms you're talking about, because I felt like on day one, I barely died to enemies. On day one, it was mechanics that were doing it for us.
I definitely think, because I know some people, you have people like Glad and all these big time content creators talking about, oh, the raid was too easy. And you know, Bungie released the numbers today. There was a staggering amount of people that completed this raid or even attempted day one compared to all previous raids.
Yeah.
And I think that's a great thing. I think that's a really good thing for the game, because now you have that end game pinnacle activity, but it's not for the elitist anymore. It's for anyone who thinks they're good enough to step into the thing. And what that does is that kind of opens the game up and lets Bungie kind of fully be like, no, this is a dungeon. Go do a dungeon. And like more people will be like, yo, I want to go do a dungeon. Let's go do the dungeon. Whereas for the longest time, you know, raids were like, it was just hard. It was hard to get through to get through some of these raids. And I think the fact that you have a raid that is shorter in length while still being mechanically challenging and not so much like enemy challenging, I think that's really good for the longevity of the game. Because if you were to go into this raid and like say it was like D1 where like they squished your power cap, you had no added power from the artifact, and people were just getting wiped by ads. Like you had to fight for your life the whole thing. The raid would have been a slog. More people would have been turned away from it. They wouldn't want to play it. Now when you kind of separate that, because you know if you're not paying attention, you will die from ads. It's happened. But like it's mechanical. Like you have to focus, you have to communicate, you have to be a team instead of, all right, you know, is this down? Okay, everyone gather up on me for DPS. Like now people are talking back and forth, and it kind of it makes you sit back. Like I sat back by the time we got to Taniks, I was like, this raid isn't hard.
No,
like enemy wise, and I love it. Like I'd rather be focused on mechanics than focused on mechanics and worrying for my life. Like in as grand as Kingsfall is, that was Kingsfall and Wrath of the Machine and all the other raids in D1 and you know in D2. It was like, no, these enemies will literally just like
they'll murder you.
They'll two-tap you. Also, you got to pay attention to like 3 different mechanics that are going on right now. Otherwise, the boss is gonna enrage.
So legit DSC is like kind of the new light raid, and I mean that in the best way possible. Because when you I personally liked Crown, but when you have shit as chaotic as Crown,
dude,
it turns people off of it, you know, like exactly like you were saying. So the fact that DSC is, and this is kind of the illusion of environmental storytelling in the narrative, where DSC feels massive, and then you finish and you're like, holy crap, it hasn't even been an hour. Like it is a very small raid, and it's also very accessible, and I love the challenging content. But I think the take that all content needs to be challenging is a bad one, because the more accessible the game is, the more people you're going to have come through, and the more you're actually going to grow. So the fact that DSC is the new light raid, I think it's a good thing, you know, because more people can get in there and get the loot and experience it, be part of a group. And then they can go and get a taste for that more challenging stuff. But yeah, DSC is like tiny, but it's super fun. I think they knocked it out of the park with this raid.
I do too. I think
Hmm.
it's a great time. If you haven't done it yet, uh go get a fire team if you can. Go and do it. It's current. It's worth it. It's fun. It's super just the deep. If you do it for one thing and one thing only, do it for the Deep Stone Lullaby.
Hmm. Honestly.
We have not had anything like that in Destiny, to be honest. And it Deep Stone Crypt, and I think Beyond Light as an expansion, just to give like final thoughts to wrap up,
Hmm.
they really start fleshing out the player fantasy.
Yes.
Like, when I say having a calm, extensive raid, that's what it would actually be like. If you know, let's all pretend for a second we're not sitting at computers right now. You're not in your car listening to this. We're guardians, right? That's what that raid would feel like. You know, you take the gamey stuff like glitching the buff to stay warm out. You take away stuff like that and like some of the bugs and glitches. But if the 6 of us were in that room fighting Atrex, that's what would be going on.
Yeah.
We would be communicating like nobody's business, and I love that. And that's the thing I love about Destiny is the player fantasy is beginning to become more and more fleshed out.
Yeah.
So that's my take. You have any final remarks before we wrap up?
Nope. I mean, I'm pretty much covered everything as quickly and succinctly as I could on this. Just, I love where Beyond Light is and where it's going.
So, Zeph, thank you for joining me.
And thanks for having me.
And thank you all for listening. And if you want to join in on the fun, we stream and record the podcast live every Thursday at 6 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. Link will be in the description for Zeph's stream and my stream. So until next time, don't forget to lift, feast, and game. And we'll see you in the next one.